Welcome back to the week of Can You Guess the Theme Yet? So it never felt even a little bit okay to me that I did my What's the Best Soundwave without the FansToys one in it. It was always a horrible compromise and it shouldn't have happened. But I'd gotten what I felt like was enough other Soundwaves, and I'd seen enough reviews that I was confident that the number 1 slot was safe, and people had been asking for a What's the Best for forever. So it seemed like what I should do for the milestone. I didn't have the money for the FansToys stupid overblown prices at the time, but as soon as I started getting paid again, I knew that I had to correct the mistake that was What's the Best Soundwave. So this is kind of an addendum to my last WTB. It's going to be a little different than my normal stuff because it's more of a comparison than a typical review, since obviously this thing is only competing to see if it knocks the MP off its number 1 spot, as it's pretty much obvious that nothing else is really going to give this thing trouble on its way to the top. But is this possibly better, or at least as good as the masterpiece? It's FansToys Soundwave. So if your only concern is getting a Soundwave that looks exactly like the cartoon character, except no substitutes, this does that better than anything else by a country mile. Some of you are obviously going to say that's boring. I don't tend to agree. Some of you are going to tell me to convert this thing to the toy form to fix that, but I don't think that's a good idea. You know me, if they want to release something that looks like the toy, I think they should just re-release the original toy unaltered. And if you like that look, that's fine, but I don't think it resolves the toon aesthetic is boring crowd's problem. Okay, so this looks absolutely more accurate than the masterpiece. In every way, it's more accurate. Personally, I happen to think that it looks less cool than the masterpiece, but it is more accurate. However, that's not to say that there aren't some issues here. More than most Hypertoon accurate figures, the details here come off kind of soft and rounded. And once again, when compared to the MP Soundwave, we find that the legs are too long. It does not make it so it loses out on the look, but it's still something I always hate seeing. Outside that, the shoulder cannon here is a lot less useful than on the MP, as this is really just an accessory pegged onto his shoulder rather than the more complex part of the masterpiece. Though I do like the way it stores. And the backpack is significantly bigger and more in the way. It's a bit unsightly. A lot of people are going to crow about the die-cast weight of this thing, and once again, I'm going to say it, I don't give a damn. The weight is fake. Die-cast is fucking stupid. Am I supposed to be impressed like a caveman? Heavy thing good for hitting oog oog. Oog oog get all the bitches. Hit oog oog with heavy thing, then me get all bitches. The plastic parts are just as brittle or durable as plastic parts always are. Now it's just got some added weight, so if it falls off a shelf, it's guaranteed to break something rather than it just being likely. They didn't even use it for the chest window except for this accent piece on the outside, so that part's not even been made extra durable. They did it the right way by making it opaque plastic with a clear insert, so it didn't need it, but they still have all this die-cast, and they are only using it to make it impossible to get this figure to stand on 1 foot. Also, this is the most unsatisfying tape door I've ever run into. The button takes way too much pressure, it doesn't move even a millimeter, and it's just kind of mushy. He's got a weird button inside his chest that does nothing, and this set of hinges to do the double tape gimmick controlled by this little lever on his shoulder. These never work, so I doubt this one does too. This thing is covered in ratchets, which is kind of a problem. Like the shoulders only have 5 going out to the side, which I'd say is only half of what he needed. And then the legs are ratcheted in both the knee and the hip. However, they are much softer ratchets than in the shoulders, and with the extreme amount of metal in them, they teeter on being just strong enough to hold up. Honestly, the friction joint out to the side is just about exactly as capable of holding position. And precisely how much weight were the arms expected to hold? Did they need to be this strong? And this is something that really frustrates me about this guy. The gimmicks of build that don't do anything. He has a lot of die-cast for the purpose of adding more weight because caveman, heavy thing more good. Then he has ratchet joints because the snobby collector crowd likes ratchets, even if they are doing exactly as much work as a properly made friction joint, which we can see is true here because the friction joint works indistinguishably from the ratchets. It just doesn't do the click-click. And then in the arms, it's honestly more frustrating than it is helpful. Die-cast can be used for good. Ratchets can be used for good, but they are being used wrong here. Want to see something disturbing? If you don't flip this flap up, then it looks like Soundwave is letting his dick hang out of his skirt. Misery loves company, and now I have some, since I am no longer the only person that sees that. So is this built better than the masterpiece? I'd say no. It's built different, it's trying to be better, but the result is that everything it's doing to one-up that figure is only getting in its own way. It's heavy to be more stable than the masterpiece, but the masterpiece is plenty stable. It's got ratchet joints to combat its own weight and to hold a pose better than the masterpiece, but the masterpiece holds its poses better. It is creating problems by trying to solve problems that don't exist. Again, this looks more accurate than the MP, though the MP still does look accurate, but if supreme accuracy appeals to you, then this has that. However, the quality of the build is a trick, an illusion. It has more expensive types of build used that are achieving no more than a normal build does. One thing I will give this unequivocal credit for here, though, is that I like the color of blue they used more than on the MP. The masterpiece is a little too dark. On camera, it comes up almost black, and it looks bad because of it. In real life, it looks a lot better than that, but the blue of the FansToys is more accurate and it looks better in most conditions. Also, the paint here is much less easily damaged. The MP has a habit of resting painted surfaces against hard objects, so he's got horrible scratches all over his thighs, feet, and a big chunk missing from his knee. However, I would be remiss if I didn't say that the silver inner elbows and on the backs of his legs are just about the ugliest things imaginable. Deformation Space painted their joints for like $100 fewer. But no, raw metal here because they had to let you know it was metal. The head is supremely accurate, like just about everything else on this figure. I like how the white extends to the back of the head. Again, it feels a little soft, but there isn't a more accurate Soundwave on the market. And that's basically what we knew going in. This was going to be the most visually accurate Soundwave they could produce. If it was nothing else, it was going to be that. I think it looks good, but I understand if you aren't into the Hypertune aesthetic. I'll run through the accessories real quick, but this isn't going to be part of the comparison since accessories aren't taken into account in a WTB, which is good for him. He comes with a frenzy, the shoulders are about as ugly as they could have made them, pose is okay, transforms okay, he's got his pile drivers, they are spring-loaded, he's got an extra head, his guns, Soundwave's gun, exactly as hard to transform as the Masterpiece version, Soundwave's cannon, a bunch of crap that turns Soundwave into his toy version, a cassette box, and a clear energon cube that plugs into his chest that I seem to have lost. He's got a good amount of stuff, better than most figures on this front. Nowhere near the Masterpiece, but I'm not going to count that against him. Posability on this guy is extremely good, but the Masterpiece is better. Extreme head tilt up, equal to the Masterpiece, slightly better looking though, tilt down, less than the Masterpiece. Shoulders get out to a 90, which is half the MP. Backwards butterfly on the transformation hinge, tighter than I have ever experienced. So ungodly stiff that I am positive at some point I will tap this on. This is absurd. This should not be half, 1/3, 1/10 this tight. It is part of the normal transformation. You also can use it to fake a slight forwards butterfly. Not really useful for posing, but it does change the posture. The MP has an infinitely easier to use backwards butterfly. Extreme elbows here, maximum elbows on the Masterpiece. Extremely articulated hands here, with a specifically included Narcissa wrist for some reason. However, the fingers are very delicate, so getting him to open his own chest window is a recipe in breaking the figure. MP has Narcissa wrists, rotation, and simple hand opening and closing, with a bonus joint on the individual pointer, so he can open his own chest window very easily. This has the worst ab crunch I've ever seen. It's got like 3 degrees of bend, it's pointless. No ab crunch on the MP, so the same then. Hips kick forward and to the side with no issue, but back they only pull a 45. The MP is completely unimpeded in all directions. And for those of you who think the hips are weird, I think they look cool, and they are super clever because they give you like a million options on how they work. Extreme knees that don't quite get maximum knees for the MP. Feet have a tiny amount of toe up, and a decent rocker, with a fake loose as hell toe down. MP has extreme toe down and an extreme rocker. So this has the most useless ab crunch of all time, and a forwards butterfly that only works for slight posture changes, plus admittedly more advanced hands. Meanwhile, in every joint they share, the MP is at least the equal of this, if not significantly better. Knees, hips, feet, elbows, and shoulders all have extreme range advantages over this figure, and none of them are limited by detent positions. And the MP is capable of standing in poses the FansToys can't, due to the fact that it doesn't have an overblown weight problem. Posability goes to the Masterpiece, as does transformation. That doesn't mean that this is bad on the transformation. It's probably on the worst side of okay. Some things are pretty clever and fun, like how the hands work, but a lot of the tolerances are too extreme. It's panel heavy in a bad way, unlike the DS Blaster, and certain pieces like to pop off because of the design swapping gimmick. There's fun to be found in this transformation, but I tend to not do this one if I don't have to. But this could be 10 times better, and it still would lose to the Masterpiece, because the Masterpiece has the best transformation of all time. There is no way that you are doing this figure in less than 5 minutes. You can do the Masterpiece in under 30 seconds, and every second of that is pure joy. It's fun, it's clever, it's never frustrating, and it doesn't waste your time. I don't expect a figure ever being made with a better transformation than the Masterpiece. It is the pinnacle, the peak, the mountaintop. Drop to your knees and pray to this transformation for your salvation. And then the alt mode is, I'm sure this looks accurate. Sometimes there will be some shots where he's more a uniform cube. I'm not gonna lie, I think this alt mode is pretty damn ugly. In contrast with the Masterpiece, which is accurate and looks like a real tape player at the same time. Sure, it's a little knobbly from behind, but this is far from flawless too. It's not egregious, but you sure go through a lot of effort in the transformation to end up with a pretty far from perfect alt mode that looks worse than the Masterpiece just based on the design of it, and worse and less cohesive than the $140 Deformation Space Blaster when this is over $200. This alt mode is okay, but it feels like a complete afterthought. And like I anticipated when I made the What's the Best Blaster, this loses to the Masterpiece. It does one thing unequivocally better than the Masterpiece, and you may not even care about that aspect. It looks more accurate to G1. Whether or not that appeals to you is subjective, but it is the one point that it wins in a What's the Best, because accuracy to the classic interpretation of the character is a grading point. And these both are accurate to the classic interpretation of Soundwave, but the FansToys is more accurate. And that is all. In terms of quality, these are even. The FansToys is trying harder, but they are charging more and not achieving more for it. Its only positive here is that the chest window is likely more durable than the MP, but it's sacrificing a lot to get there. And the posing is worse here. It is, again, trying more, but achieving less. It has a specialty joint it might as well not have, and then there's just less range on almost every joint. Even if you don't like the hips on the MP, you have to admit that they give you a lot of options on how to use the legs. Transformation, it's not even close. You could put all the best other Transformers I've ever covered against the MP, and the MP would still win by a landslide. But the FansToys doesn't even have the courtesy to have a good one. It's decent, but it's not good, and I can foresee a lot of people actively hating it. And then the alt modes are just not equal. The FansToys looks like a cartoon cassette player. Not the Transformers cartoon, just a cartoon. Meanwhile, the Masterpiece looks like it's supposed to, it looks real, and it looks good as both. I was not kidding when I said I didn't think the Masterpiece could be beat. It's the best Transformers figure of all time, and the Masterpiece Soundwave is still the best. This is pulling up a respectable number 2 now though, bumping down even the awesome Kingdom Core Class figure. None of what I said today, no matter how nitpicky, was to try and convince you this is bad. It's not. This is a good figure. It's just not as good as the best Transformers figure of all time. And I don't think it's worth what they charge for it at all. There is no way you get this for cheaper, but if this was $180, I'd say that's decent. And that's not half what I have to say, but it's enough what I have to say. And I know, you know, what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So, if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please, share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.